The silent power. The CEO who invited his own executioner. Subscribe now. Witness how an arrogant man loses absolutely everything on the night of his absolute triumph by underestimating the woman he thought he had discarded. The price of pride. Sawyer Roth adjusted the knot of his silk tie, his reflection staring back at him from the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of his corner office. 22 floors above the Hudson River, he felt like a king. As Senior Vice President of Business Development at Apex Designs, the city's most prestigious architectural firm, Sawyer wasn't just successful, he was the living symbol of success. His life was a meticulously curated masterpiece. The minimalist steel and glass apartment, the gleaming German sports car, and his fiancée, Bianca Slade, a woman whose beauty was only surpassed by her family's social standing. He was in the final stages of planning the firm's 50th anniversary gala. This wasn't just a party. It was his coronation. For 2 years, Apex had been run by a transition team representing the estate of the reclusive founder, J.M. Pierce. The mysterious new owner, known only by those initials, had never been seen. Sawyer, who had single-handedly landed the highly coveted $200 million Crescendo residential tower project, was certain. The owner's first public appearance at the gala would be to announce him as the new CEO. He was reviewing the catering proofs when his office phone buzzed. It was his colleague, Philip. "Hey, Sawyer, quick question about seating arrangements," Philip said. "But first, you won't guess who I ran into at lunch. Remember your ex-wife, Jeanette? Jeanette?" Sawyer's grip tightened on his mouse. Jeanette. The name tasted like ash. He hadn't seen her in 3 years, since the divorce. She was his one persistent failure. He had discovered her working as a waitress in a small cafe while he was a junior architect. He had been captivated by her quiet intelligence, but as his star rose, her simplicity became an anchor. Dunker. She studied business at night, but he saw no fire in her. "I need a queen, John, not a waitress," he had told her the day she packed her bags. "I'm building an empire, and you're just stagnant. You have no ambition." "Jeanette? What about her?" Sawyer said, feigning disinterest. "She's back in New York. Saw her downtown. She looked the same. Simple. I think she's working some administrative job at a logistics company," Philip said casually. A slow, cruel smile spread across Sawyer's face. "An administrative job? Perfect." "Oh, really?" he murmured. "That's interesting." After he hung up, the seed of an idea began to sprout, nasty and thrilling. He could simply ignore her, or he could do a public service. He could show her, in one dazzling, overwhelming night, exactly what she had given up. He could show her the empire he had built, the queen he had found, and the pathetic small life she was destined for. This wasn't just about success. It was about proving he was right. What would you do in Sawyer's position? Would you turn your back or seek a confrontation? Leave your opinion in the comments. Is pride a motivating force or a deadly trap? He mentioned it to Bianca that very night in their penthouse. Bianca, filing her nails on a white suede chaise lounge, loved the idea. "Oh, honey, that's cruel. I love it," she purred, the diamonds on her engagement ring catching the light. "A little charity case for the gala. We can introduce her to the chairman of the board. It will be adorable watching her try to curtsy. It's an educational opportunity," Sawyer said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He found her email address through a mutual acquaintance. He spent 10 full minutes crafting the message, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his heart pounding with petulant, vengeful excitement. Subject: An opportunity for you, Jeanette. I heard from Philip that you've returned to New York. I trust you are finding your footing. As you may or may not know, I am hosting Apex Designs' 50th anniversary gala at the Plaza Hotel. It's quite an exclusive event, but for old time's sake, I have managed to secure an invitation for you and a guest, despite the tight list. I think it would be enlightening for you to see how the other half lives. It might provide some much-needed perspective, or at least a good meal. Please let my assistant know if you can attend. I'm sure you don't have many evening gowns hanging in your closet, so don't feel pressured to buy anything new. Just try to look presentable. All the best. Sawyer Roth, SVP. Apex Designs. He hit send, imagining her face. The embarrassment, the humiliation, the bitter realization of her mistake. 20 miles away, in a sleek, soundproof office overlooking Central Park, a notification chimed. Jeanette M. Pierce looked up from a complex financial projection. Her office was the opposite of Sawyer's. Warm woods, soft lighting, walls lined with books, not trophies. She read the email once, twice. A small, cold smile touched her lips. She thought of the empire she had not only inherited, but had spent 2 years secretly rebuilding. She thought of the audits, the restructuring, and the stack of files on her desk, one of which bore Sawyer's name, marked in red. Her executive assistant, a sharp, older man named Martin, walked in with a stack of letters. "More confirmations for the gala, Ms. Pierce," he said, "and the final draft of your speech." "Thank you, Martin," she said, not looking up from her screen. "And Martin, I will need that +1 invitation." "For your mother?" She clicked reply. "Sawyer is overdue for his performance review. I think a black tie environment is perfectly appropriate." She typed one word and hit send, delighted. What do you think Jeanette felt reading that email? Rage, sadness, or something else? Share your thoughts. Is revenge a dish best served cold or hot? Chapter 2. The Silent Architect. The divorce had been brutal, not in its legality, but in its emotional violence. Sawyer had not just left. He had dissected her, piece by piece, until she felt worthless. No ambition was his kindest critique. Provincial, fearful, and permanently insignificant were his favorites. He told her he was destined for greatness, and she was the dead weight he was shedding. She had signed the papers in a daze, crushed by the man she had supported, loved, and helped earn his final certifications while she worked double shifts at the cafe and attended night school. She cried for a week. Then she got angry. Then she got focused. 2 months after the divorce was final, the call came. Jeanette's maternal grandfather, J.M. Pierce, had passed away. She barely knew the man. He was a reclusive, almost mythical figure from whom her mother had been estranged. Jeanette had met him once, at her mother's funeral. He was a quiet, imposing man who had looked at her with a penetrating, analytical gaze. She was summoned to a law firm in Midtown. The lawyer, Mr. Quentin Dickelman, who she would later learn was the chairman of the board, explained the situation with disbelief. J.M. Pierce, a man who had built a multi-billion-dollar holding company, had left everything to her. Not his distant children, not a charity, but his only granddaughter. The holding, Pierce Equities, owned dozens of properties, several tech startups, and one pet project he had founded in his youth. Apex Designs. Jeanette was stunned. At 28, she had just inherited an empire. But the inheritance came with a warning, a handwritten letter from the old man himself. "Jeanette, your mother was soft. I was hard. You, I see, are steel. But steel needs to be forged. The companies are yours, but they are full of vipers. Apex, my first love, is the worst of them. They are arrogant and fat. Do not let them see you. Do not let them know you. They will devour you alive. Be a ghost. Watch. Learn. And when you are ready, strike. Trust Martin. He served me. He will serve you." She followed his advice. For the first 6 months, she did nothing but listen. Martin, her grandfather's lifelong confidant, and now her executive assistant, became her guide. He was the only person in the world who knew her identity. To the Apex board, the new owner was J.M.P. Pierce, a faceless entity communicating through the estate's lawyers. Jeanette, meanwhile, took an administrative job at one of her own logistics firms, using her mother's maiden name. She sat in a cubicle. She listened to the break room gossip. She learned the business from the ground up, just as her grandfather had. After a year, she began managing from the shadows. She moved into her true office, a private floor in a Price Equities-owned building, under a shell corporation. She, as J.M.P. Pierce, began issuing directives, demanding audits, cutting bloat, restructuring departments. And she watched Sawyer Roth. She watched him ascend, promoted by the very vipers her grandfather had warned her about. He was all shine. His projects looked incredible on paper, but the audits she requested showed a different story. Razor-thin margins, dissatisfied clients, and the $200 million Crescendo Tower contract, which, to put it mildly, was built on a foundation of lies. Sawyer promised features the firm couldn't deliver on a timeline it couldn't meet. The client, a massive private equity group, was getting nervous. Jeanette had been preparing to step in for months. The 50th anniversary gala was her idea. She was going to make her introduction. The ghost was finally going to appear, clean house, and set the new standard for her company. Sawyer's invitation wasn't just an insult. It was a cosmic joke. He was a condemned man, blissfully unaware, inviting the executioner to the gallows and offering her a drink. "Are you absolutely sure you want to proceed this way, Ms. Pierce?" Martin asked, adjusting his glasses. He was fiercely loyal and protective. This is a circus. He's a buffoon. You don't need to submit to this." Jeanette looked back at the invitation. Presentable? Her lip curled. "Oh, absolutely. Sawyer is the prototype of everything that is wrong with this firm. He is the embodiment of arrogance. The board needs to see what happens when that arrogance is given a platform. He thinks he's the star of the show. He's only the before photo." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "He wants me to see his empire, Martin. He has no idea he's been living in mine." "What does presentable mean to you? Is it just about appearance, or is there something deeper? Tell us. Do you think true ambition is shown through ostentation or quiet, strategic work?" Chapter 3. The Unraveling. The week leading up to the gala was pure adrenaline for Sawyer. He was a whirlwind of activity, confirming vendors, barking orders at his assistants, and practicing his spontaneous acceptance speech for the CEO role. He was so sure of his ascent that he had already ordered a personalized plaque for his new office. "It's about presence, Bianca," he explained, pacing his apartment while she checked Instagram. "The Coleman Council. They respect strength. They saw how I managed the Crescendo deal. I willed it into existence." "Of course you did, darling," Bianca said, barely looking up. "Now, what dress? The red one or the redder one?" Bianca was as invested in this as he was. Her entire identity was a performance. She savored the thought of being a CEO's wife, but even more, she savored the drama of Jeanette's arrival. "Did she really say yes?" Bianca marveled, sitting up. "The little mouse has nerve. I'll give her that." "It's not nerve, it's desperation," Sawyer snapped. "She wants one last look at the life she could have had. She'll be in the corner, sipping a flat lemonade, watching me on stage. It's almost sad." His cruelty, however, needed an audience. He found his colleague Philip near the elevators. Philip was a competent, if unexciting, architect. Sawyer saw him as a rival, but one who posed no threat. "Philip, my man, ready for the big night?" Sawyer clapped him on the back. "It will be a night," Philip said, non-committally. Still a lot of chatter about who this JTM Pierce is. I heard they're ruthless. The entire third floor was restructured via email. Ruthless is just another word for efficient, Sawyer bragged. Can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, Phil. The old guard was weak. This new owner, they know talent. They see what I've done with Crescendo. They won't leave a wealth creator like me at SVP for long. I suppose not, Philip said, shifting his briefcase. He, unlike Sawyer, had read the internal risk report on the Crescendo project and was deeply concerned. Sawyer, drunk on his own arrogance, decided to go one step further. He stopped at a luxury jewelry store on the way home. Not for Bianca, but for Jeanette. He told the saleswoman he needed something for a charity auction, something simple, for someone who didn't get out much. He settled on a thin, silver-plated bracelet with a small cubic zirconia. It cost 80 euros. He had it gift-wrapped. He would give it to Jeanette at the gala, maybe right after his speech. A little no hard feelings. A trinket. A reminder of the life she would never touch. Across town, Jeanette's preparations were of a different nature. She wasn't planning an outfit. She was planning a war. Her administrative job was long forgotten. She was in the main boardroom of Pierce Equities, flanked by Martin and Mr. Coleman, the apex chairman of the board. Coleman, a severe man in his 60s, had been skeptical of Jeanette at first. Now, he was her most fervent convert. He had watched her turn a dozen failing assets into profitable ventures. "The audit is complete, Ms. Pierce," Coleman said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "It's exactly as you suspected. Sawyer Roth is a house of cards." Jeanette opened the folder. The numbers were damning. The 200 million Crescendo contract was not secured. The client, a massive private equity group called North Star Holdings, was not only nervous, but actively threatening litigation. Sawyer had hidden the breach notices. He had fabricated progress reports. In essence, he had been lying to the board for 6 months to secure his promotion. "He's been inflating his expenses," Jeanette noted, her finger tracing a line item. "A £5,000 dinner at Diverso for client relations." Diverso, Martin specified. That's where his fiancée, Bianca Slade, held her birthday party. "He's not just arrogant, he's a thief," Jeanette said, her voice quiet and lethal. "And the board? They're embarrassed," Coleman admitted. "They bought into his charm. They wanted to. He was the perfect image. But they are with you. His fraud voids his contract. His dismissal will be effective when you decide." "I have decided," Jeanette said, closing the folder. "It will be effective the moment he steps down from that stage." "And the gala? The invitation?" Coleman asked, frowning. "It's a security risk. It's beneath you." "It's necessary," Jeanette said. "He wants to make a spectacle of me?" "He's right. It will be a spectacle. But he has his roles reversed. He thinks he's the star of the show. He is only the before picture." Only then did she turn to her personal preparations. She wasn't having a dress made. She already had her armor. In her private closet was a tailored outfit. It wasn't a dazzling gown. It was a midnight blue wool and silk creation, half suit, half dress. It had sharp, defined shoulders, a severe yet elegant neckline, and a cut that was pure, unadulterated power. It was not the dress of a guest. It was the dress of an owner. "He told me to look presentable, Martin," she said, glancing at the outfit. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint him." Do you think Jeanette's preparation for the gala was overkill or completely justified? Tell us your opinion. Should a good leader prioritize personal dignity or corporate justice? Chapter 4. The Annihilation. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel in Madrid was a sea of black ties, diamonds, and noise. Champagne flowed from gravity-defying towers. A string quartet played softly in a corner, ignored by the laughing, shouting members of Madrid's financial and architectural elite. Sawyer Roth stood near the grand staircase, his arm possessively around Bianca's waist. Bianca, a vision in blood red, a dress so bright and tight it demanded attention. Sawyer felt a surge of pride. This was his life. These were his people. "There's Coleman," Sawyer muttered, pointing toward the bar. "He looks nervous. Good. He's probably anxious for the big announcement. Stop fidgeting, darling. You're wrinkling your lapel," Bianca hissed, before directing a dazzling smile at a passing bank president. Philip found them, looking pale. "Sawyer, I just got a text from the North Star client rep. He says he's here. He sounds furious." Sawyer's smile tightened. He grabbed Philip by the elbow, guiding him behind a pillar. "He didn't say anything about fraud?" "No," Philip lied, trying to protect himself. "He just said he's nervous. He's only nervous. Don't say a word of this, you understand? They're just nervous. I'll handle it after my announcement. The rep is probably just trying to squeeze us. Don't ruin this, for me." Philip backed away, nodding silently. Sawyer adjusted his tie and returned to Bianca's side, his mask of triumph firmly back in place. "Where is she?" he whispered, scanning the crowd. "It's 8:30. Maybe the little mouse lost her nerve, or couldn't get a cab." "She lost her nerve," Bianca cackled. And then he saw her. Jeanette was not announced. She did not arrive. She simply appeared. She had entered through a private entrance, bypassing the check-in line, and now stood by the main doors, speaking quietly with Mr. Coleman, the chairman of the board. Sawyer's first reaction was disappointment. He had braced himself for a pathetic sight. A cheap polyester dress, frizzy hair, a look of wide-eyed terror. Jeanette was none of those things. The midnight blue outfit she wore was confusing. It was not a gala gown. It was simple, austere, and so perfectly tailored it must have cost a fortune. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She wore no jewelry, save for a pair of simple diamond studs. She looked formidable. She was not gawking at the crowd in awe. She was scanning it. Her expression, analytical. And she was talking to Coleman, who listened to her with a look of intense, unfamiliar respect. "What? What is she doing talking to Coleman?" Sawyer stammered. "He probably pities her," Bianca scoffed, though a line of uncertainty had appeared on her forehead. "Look at that dress. It's a suit. She looks like she's here to do someone's tax returns." Sawyer, needing to reassert control, grabbed Bianca's hand and strode toward them. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. He needed to put her back in her box. "Jean!" he exclaimed, feigning delighted surprise. He physically wedged himself between her and Coleman. "You made it. And Mr. Coleman, you've met my ex-wife, Jeanette." Coleman looked at Sawyer as if he were something he had scraped off his shoe. "Mr. Roth," he said, his voice glacial. Jeanette, however, smiled. It was a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Sawyer. Bianca. What a lovely dress." "Thank you," Bianca said, looking Jeanette up and down. "And yours? How resourceful. Did you make it yourself? It's very functional. Serves its purpose." "It does," Jeanette said calmly. "Well, I'm so glad you came," Sawyer continued, regaining his smugness. He was the VP. She was nobody. Coleman was just being polite. "I was worried you'd be intimidated. The ballroom is spectacular, isn't it? This whole event, you know? This was my vision." "It certainly is a vision," Jeanette said, her eyes sweeping the room. "You certainly spared no expense." "Exactly," Sawyer laughed. "Speaking of which," he pulled her aside, away from Coleman and Bianca. "Listen, Jean, I know this must be a lot for you. Seeing all this, seeing me, I just want you to know." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, wrapped box. "I bought you something. A small token, just to show there are no hard feelings about how things faded for you. He pressed the cheap box into her hand. Jeanette looked at the box. Then she looked at him. For a second, Sawyer felt a chill. Her gaze was not the desolate, submissive look he remembered. It was the look of a biologist studying an insect. "Sawyer," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "You have no idea what you just did." Before he could respond, the ballroom lights dimmed. Mr. Coleman had left them and was walking toward the stage. A single spotlight followed him. "This is it," Sawyer whispered, puffing out his chest. He grabbed Bianca's hand. He completely forgot about Jeanette, who simply let the cheap bracelet drop from her hand, vanishing beneath a curtain. "Ladies and gentlemen, please let me have your attention," Mr. Coleman's voice boomed. Sawyer straightened his tie. He was ready for his new life. He gave Bianca's hand one final, triumphant squeeze. "This evening," Coleman continued, his voice resonating in the hushed ballroom, "is not just about honoring our past. It is about launching our future. As many of you know, for the past 2 years, Apex has been under the direction of a new, visionary owner, who, until now, has chosen to remain private while restructuring this great company from the inside out." Sawyer nodded knowingly, as if in the loop. He saw Philip in the crowd, looking green. He saw the North Star Holdings representative standing near the back, looking furious. Sawyer ignored them. This was his moment. This new leader has been known to us only by their initials, J.M. Pierce, an individual who has valued substance over spectacle, integrity over image, "He's talking about me," Sawyer whispered to Bianca, his excitement palpable. "He's using the J.M. Pierce name as a placeholder, but he's describing me, my work, my substance. It has been my honor," Coleman said, "to work with this person, to see their sharp, incisive mind, and their deep commitment to the real values of this firm. Tonight, our owner has decided it is time to step out of the shadows and take their rightful place." Sawyer took a step toward the stairs, preparing to ascend. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the sole owner, the new global CEO, and the visionary future of Apex Designs is Jeanette Marie Pierce." The words dropped into the room like a bomb. Silence. 1,000 eyes scanned the crowd, confused. Sawyer froze. His smile cracked, then dissolved. He looked at Bianca. Her face was a mask of pure, incomprehensible shock. What did he say?" Sawyer stammered. "What name was that?" A single, brilliant white spotlight shot out from the back of the room, cutting through the darkness. It did not land on the stairs. It landed directly on the woman Sawyer had just tried to give an 80,000 bracelet to. Jeanette. She stood perfectly still as the giant screens on either side of the stage, which had shown the Apex 50 logo, sprang to life. They now displayed a powerful professional photograph of her. Beneath it, in bold white letters, were the words, "Jeanette M. Pierce, CEO and owner, Apex Designs." Sawyer stopped breathing. The blood didn't just drain from his face. It felt as if it had been violently sucked out of his entire body. He looked at her. Her quiet, cold gaze met his across the small distance. "J.M. Pierce," Bianca whispered, her voice a choked gasp. Her perfectly manicured fingers dug into his arm, her nails breaking his skin. "Jeanette Marie Pierce." Sawyer couldn't speak. He just emitted a small, dry sound. Bianca tore her eyes away from the jumbotron and looked at him. Her face wasn't confused. It wasn't shocked. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. Not at Jeanette. At him. "You!" she hissed, her voice trembling with a venom he had never heard. "You invited your boss, the owner of the entire firm, to her own party, to pity her. You are an utter and complete fool." She ripped her arm free from Sawyer's grasp with a violent motion. "You are nothing." She left him completely alone, a trembling target in the residual glare of the spotlight. City's break. Do you think Jeanette was too harsh in publicly exposing Sawyer's fraud? Or was it the only way to re-establish integrity at the firm? Vote now. Public exposure or silent dismissal. Chapter 5. The Silent Execution. The silence that fell over the grand ballroom as Jeanette walked away was heavier than any sound. The music did not rise to cover the moment. The string quartet simply stopped playing, their bows frozen, their eyes wide. Sawyer was still on his knees, a fixed, grotesque statue of humiliation. The spotlight had moved off him, but he remained the center of all attention, a black hole of disgrace. He heard a single sharp sound, a laugh. He looked up. It was Bianca. She stood 20 feet away, champagne glass in hand. She looked at him with an expression of pure, unadulterated contempt. She wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was amused. She had already processed her loss, and now she simply marveled at his stupidity. "Well," she said, loud enough for those around her to hear, "he certainly isn't CEO material, is he?" She turned away, not rushing, but with a cold, deliberate grace, and walked toward a man by the bar, a hedge fund manager Sawyer had always despised. Bianca tapped the man's shoulder, and when he turned, she gave him a dazzling, predatory smile. She was already cutting her losses, her future secured before Sawyer's knees had scraped the floor. That was the last time he saw her. The next sound he heard was the announcement 48 hours later, in the society pages, breaking their engagement and, in one brutal sentence, aligning herself with integrity and honesty. "Sir." Sawyer flinched. The 2 security guards Jeanette had summoned were now standing over him. They were not cruel, but their expressions were firm, their hands resting on their belts. "You need to come with us, sir." The word "sir" was a mockery. A guard took his arm, hauling him up. He was dead weight. The walk from the center of the ballroom to the side exit was the longest of his life. It was a via dolorosa of whispers, of averted glances, and worst of all, pity. The pity he had been so eager to pour on Jeanette was now drowning him. Martin, Jeanette's quiet, severe assistant, waited at the door. He did not speak. He simply guided him down a service elevator to what had been Sawyer's office. His security pass was already deactivated. His nameplate was gone. In 10 minutes, he was back in the service elevator, clutching a small cardboard box containing a framed photo, a coffee mug, and a meaningless top seller trophy. He was escorted out the back door into a cold, wet Madrid alley, a sobbing, incoherent wreck. The professional consequences were just as swift and surgical. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Jeanette Pierce walked into the Apex Designs lobby. The office, usually buzzing at that hour, was a tomb. Employees stood by their cubicles, unsure whether to sit, work, or flee. Jeanette summoned an all-hands meeting in the atrium. She stood on the central staircase, wearing the same power suit from the night before. "Good morning," she said, her voice ringing out without a microphone. "Last night was a new beginning. My first act is one of transparency." She held up the audit report. "This document," she said, "details the lies, the bloat, and the fraud perpetrated by Mr. Roth. It also details the courageous work of those who tried to stop him." She scanned the crowd and found a pale, terrified Philip. "Philip!" she called out. "Please come up here." He looked as if he were being summoned for his own execution. He climbed the stairs, his legs shaking. "Philip," Jeanette said, "is the only person who filed accurate risk reports on the Crescendo project. He is the only person who had the integrity to speak the truth, even when ordered to conceal it. For that, I am promoting him to Senior Vice President, and he will head a new internal integrity task force. Your first job is to complete the audit." A different kind of shockwave went through the room. It wasn't fear. It was relief and respect. Jeanette's next move was to fly to New York. She didn't send a lawyer. She went herself. She sat in the North Star Holdings boardroom, placed the audit on the table and said, "Gentlemen, my predecessor committed fraud. Here is the proof. Here is his termination notice. And here is my personal check for the funds he embezzled." They were stunned. For an hour, she made no excuses. She answered every question with brutal honesty. At the end of the meeting, the North Star CEO, who had been ready to sue the company into bankruptcy, tore up the lawsuit. "Ms. Pierce," he said, "I've been in this business for 40 years. You are the first person from Apex I trust. Forget the old project. Let's talk about a new one." 3 months later, they signed a new, much larger contract. It was the beginning of her legend. Meanwhile, Sawyer was learning the true meaning of the word consequences. He was unemployable. The word Roth became a verb in Madrid finance. Don't pull a Roth. He lost the penthouse. The bank foreclosed on the car. His legal fees, as Apex initiated a civil suit to reclaim the embezzled funds, bankrupted him. 6 months after the gala, Philip was leaving Apex Tower. He was now a respected senior executive, on his way to a lunch meeting at a restaurant he previously couldn't afford. A poorly fitting polo shirt and emaciated, aged man with thinning hair rushed past him, carrying a package. The courier stopped, recognizing him. Their eyes met. It was Sawyer. Philip saw not a rival, but an empty shell. Sawyer's eyes, once so full of arrogance and fire, were now only tormented. He couldn't hold the gaze. He looked down at the pavement, his face burning with a shame so deep it was painful to see. He grabbed his package and scuttled away, disappearing into the lunchtime crowd. Jeanette Pierce, on the other hand, thrived. She rebuilt Apex from the ground up, not with shine, but with steel. She was featured on the cover of Expansion magazine for the fastest corporate turnaround of the decade. She was tough, she was fair, and she was brilliant. She never saw Sawyer again. She never had to. She had already given him his life sentence. He had not only lost his job or his fiancée, he had lost his past, his present, and his future. All in one night. He was forced to live each day with the agonizing, all-consuming regret that the woman he discarded for being too small was, in fact, the greatest person he had ever known. He wasn't a fool because he left her. He was a fool because he thought she was worthless. But she was never insignificant. He simply failed to recognize value. And so, Sawyer's world collapsed, not from a single error, but from a profound, deep-seated arrogance. He tried to humiliate the one person who held his entire life in her hands, and his regret is a prison of his own making. Jeanette proved that true power is not about the noise you make or the spotlight you crave. It is about the quiet integrity you forge when no one is watching. This story of the Great Madrid downfall leaves us with a profound lesson. A person's worth is not defined by the title they hold, but by the character they forge in silence. What did you think of Sawyer's karmic downfall? Do you think it was justified? What would you have done if you were in Jeanette's shoes? Avenge the pain, or simply ignore it? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If this story of ambition, vengeance, and justice impacted you, like and share it, so more people can discover the power of the ghost who became CEO. Welcome back. If you think Jeanette has earned her peace, hit that like button. This is the final chapter of her story, where a figure from her discarded life attempts a desperate return. The first anniversary, unassailable. 1 year had passed since the infamous Beaumont Gala and the collapse of the fraudulent Sterling Group. Jeanette Pierce was no longer just the CEO of Apex Designs. She was a legend. She had stabilized the firm, launched VantSynth 2.0 globally, and successfully overseen the new North Star project, cementing her reputation as the shrewdest leader in the industry. Her personal life, once marked by quiet suffering, was now fiercely protected and beautifully organized. She owned a renovated townhouse in Chelsea, spent weekends painting, a hobby she had quietly resumed, and regularly consulted for the New York Public Library, the same place where she had spent her quiet, invisible years. She was hosting a small, private celebratory dinner at her Chelsea townhouse, a quiet gathering for her inner circle. Mr. Coleman, Philip, now her loyal COO, and her trusted assistant, Martin. The conversation was about the firm's successful integration of the new technology. "You saved us, Jeanette," Mr. Coleman said, raising his glass. "You took a firm that was rotting from the arrogance of the few and rebuilt it with integrity. To the Queen of Apex." Jeanette smiled, raising her glass of non-alcoholic sparkling cider. "To integrity, gentlemen. It's a better long-term investment than hubris." As they were enjoying dessert, Martin's phone discreetly buzzed. He glanced at it, his granite-like expression briefly flickering with distaste. He immediately stepped out to take the call. When he returned, his posture was rigid, and his voice was low, strained. "Ms. Pierce, I apologize for the interruption. I just took a call from security at the building. A man attempted to deliver a package to your office. When we intercepted him, he insisted the package was personal and contained vital, non-business information for you." Jeanette looked at him, her eyes calm. "Who was it, Martin?" Martin hesitated, taking a deep breath. "It was Robert Sterling, Mr. Roth's former lawyer. He was dismissed from his firm after the civil suit." Jeanette's face remained utterly impassive. She hadn't spoken Robert's name in a year. The man was a ghost, a legal footnote. "Did he leave the package?" "No. He insisted on giving it only to you. He is currently waiting in a cafe 2 blocks from your house, pleading for 5 minutes of your time. He says he has information about Sawyer that he claims is critical to your safety and the firm's reputation." A shiver of genuine coldness ran through the room. They had assumed Sawyer was completely neutralized. "Safety?" Philip asked, his eyes wide. "After what we put him through, he wouldn't dare." "Sawyer is bankrupt but desperate," Jeanette noted, her voice analytical. "Desperation makes people stupid, not quiet." "Martin, thank you. Please send 2 members of our security team to ensure Mr. Sterling is monitored, but tell them to wait. I will handle this." The ghost of the past. An hour later, Jeanette walked into the quiet, upscale cafe. It was dimly lit, smelling of aged leather and espresso. She spotted Robert Sterling immediately. He looked older, tired, wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit. A far cry from the arrogance he wore at the gala. He looked up as she approached, and his face lit up with a mixture of relief and fear. He immediately stood, knocking his ceramic mug. "Jeanette, thank God. Thank you for coming. I knew you would." Jeanette did not sit. She stood across the table, maintaining a barrier of space and cold dignity. "I am here for 5 minutes, Robert, and only because Martin used the word safety. You are lucky you didn't approach the building." Robert swallowed hard. No, of course. I respect your boundaries, Jeanette. I know I lost everything, but this is important. It's about Sawyer." He looked around nervously before dropping his voice to a whisper. "He's completely gone. He's been living out of his car. But he hasn't been quiet. He has a package, a physical ledger. It details every illegal financial maneuver he made over the last 2 years. Undeclared bank accounts, private offshore deals, names of partners he blackmailed." "We already have that information, Robert. It's in the audit," Jeanette said, glancing at her watch. "No, you don't. This ledger, the Red Book, it includes the names of 2 board members who were covering for him before your grandfather passed. They are still sitting on the board. They are still protecting him. And Sawyer is planning to leak the Red Book to a tabloid next week. He wants one final, public scandal to destroy Apex and bring you down with him. Jeanette processed the information instantly. 2 current board members. That was a genuine threat. It wasn't about money. It was about the integrity of the foundation her grandfather trusted her to protect. "Why are you telling me this, Robert?" Jeanette asked, her voice sharp. Robert leaned forwards, his eyes desperately pleading. "I am telling you this because I was complicit in some of the early cover-ups. I was scared of Sawyer. I lost my job, my license, everything. But I deserve to go down with some semblance of honor. I don't want to be dragged into a federal investigation over this. I am asking you to handle Sawyer quietly. Neutralize the threat before he burns the firm down. I will give you the Red Book. Just keep me out of the subsequent investigation." Black Pawn. The final transaction. Jeanette looked at the broken man before her. He wasn't malicious. He was just weak, motivated by self-preservation. She compared him to Sawyer. Sawyer acted out of malice. Robert acted out of cowardice. "Where is the Red Book, Robert?" "It's in a safety deposit box. I'll give you the key and the code. But you have to promise." "I don't make promises, Robert. I make deals," Jeanette corrected him. "If the Red Book proves to be accurate, I will ensure that your name is referenced only as a cooperating witness who came forward out of a sense of fiduciary duty. Your name will not be linked to the criminal charges." Robert's shoulders slumped in relief. "That's all I ask. That's all I ever wanted." The transaction was swift. Robert handed her a small, heavy key and a coded card. Jeanette took them without flinching. She stood up, ready to leave. "Jeanette," Robert said, his voice barely a whisper. "Why? Why are you this way? You could have been soft. You could have been happy." Jeanette paused by the door, looking back at him. She smiled slightly, the same cold, analytical smile she had worn at the gala. "I am happy, Robert. True happiness is realizing that the only person you need to control is yourself. And I control my own destiny now. You should try it." She left the cafe. Outside, Philip and the security team were waiting. "Martin," she instructed into the earpiece, "initiate the Gold Task Force. We have 2 rogue board members and a potential leak. This needs to be handled immediately and silently. We are going to conduct a surgical removal of the cancer." Conclusion. The unstoppable legacy. The resolution of the Red Book crisis was handled with Jeanette's characteristic precision. No public scandal, just quiet, surgical efficiency. Within 2 weeks, the 2 implicated board members were forced to retire due to undisclosed health issues, and the Red Book was secured and used only as internal leverage. As for Sawyer, Martin ensured that he received an anonymous wire transfer, exactly the amount needed to cover his bus fare out of the state, with a note: "Debt settled. Do not return." His ultimate punishment was not prison, but irrelevance. He was erased from the high-stakes world he had worshipped. Jeanette Pierce proved once again that her power was not based on luck or a temporary market spike, but on unshakable integrity and the preparedness to act. She had successfully defended her grandfather's legacy from external malice and internal rot, proving that true leadership is about protecting the foundation, not just taking the credit. Final thought. Jeanette's initial pain was the price of admission to her true power. She turned her humiliation into a shield and her silence into a weapon. She is the definitive example that you don't rise by tearing others down. You rise by becoming unassailable yourself. Was Robert Sterling redeemed by giving Jeanette the ledger, or was his act purely selfish? Let us know your thoughts on his final transaction. Don't forget to like and subscribe.